Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another special episode of Herschel Talkers. We got Big Sean returning. How we doing today, Sean?
Well, actually, my monkey ear is Hans Gruber.
Hans
Yippee
Gruber.
mother trucker.
There we go. And we also got great return guest. Had Scott on last week. Diehard Ohio State fan. How we doing today, Scott? He's profiling coming in here.
Absolutely.
There he is. Thanks for joining us. Also, rate and subscribe. Get some of those views up, those subscribers up. Had a good response last week, so we're trying to build off that. Jumping right into it. Georgia coming off a big 24-21 victory. Last, I think it was 53 or 54-yarder by Jack. How you pronounce his name, Sean? Ponce? I call him Poncelini.
That's good enough for me.
There it is, 24-21. Georgia looking a little rough in the first half, to be honest, 24-10. Going into the fourth quarter, I think I texted Sean and some other friends. They're cashed out. They're done, not motivated. Saw them yawning on the sideline. But the defense rose up. JT Daniels passing for 392 yards, actually over 400 altogether. Zamir White kind of shut down the running game here, 45 yards. But the defense rose up and shut out, except for a long touchdown in the second half. A good Cincinnati team who's definitely motivated, 24-21. You know, Georgia's not where they want to be this year, but I felt like they finished strong. Could possibly end up top 6, top 5. But good win, 24-21, good win for the program. We got a lot of guys coming back. JT Daniels announced he's returning this for next year, 2021. Jordan Davis, your boy, Sean, that was a big pickup. Kyrus Jackson's returning. The wide receivers are going to be deep. Could get some transfers. Eric Gilbert from LSU is a rumor. So what's your thoughts on the game? I thought it was a great win to finish 8-2 and beating a top 10 team. John?
Personally, I think the game was about what we kind of thought it was going to be, right? I mean, I think we all suspected that Georgia was probably going to have some motivational issues in this game, but that Cincinnati was probably, going to be highly motivated because, again, they were finished the regular season undefeated, were left out of the playoffs. And winning a game like this against a program that's been, probably like top 6 in terms of, success over the last 4 or 5 years, it helps bolster that argument until if and when the playoff committee expands the playoffs, right? Cincinnati played great. You got to hand it to them. At the end of the day, though, I think we just had, better athletes and, that was really kind of the tail of the game, so to speak. It certainly was a game where we could have laid down like, Florida did in their bowl game, but, we found a way to kind of grit it out. And, I don't want to underestimate, Cincinnati by any means, right? I mean, they beat everybody they put in front of us and almost beat us too. So, it's actually probably I think a bigger win than, we may initially want to admit to ourselves.
Yeah.
Scott, what do you think?
And also, Scott, it moves up to Georgia to 4.5 or 4-1 bowl game wins for Kirby Smart.
Yes, I will take that as 4.5 bowl victories because, you don't count that second half overtime versus Alabama.
Exactly.
And then I know JT, I don't know, did he actually go and do his own Heisman pose? Because he kind of looked like a statue in the backfield when he was getting crushed. But I will say
easy now, coming off from the injury. Come on now.
But I will say that also tells you where Georgia is with their expectations. And then they should be there because it's a disappointing season when you have 2 losses. Of course, your 2 losses are against Florida and Alabama, who end up playing the SEC championship.
Right.
Now, regardless, it's still a win for Georgia. But also Cincinnati proved, that they can play with Georgia. And, they played a better half. They were more motivated. But you could also see as the game went on that, Georgia wore them down, later in the game. And, they got them 3 and out. So, Georgia's defense definitely became more stout. So I guess I can't blame Cincinnati going for that late first down. But I guess I will because it backfired. Instead of just running the ball, they threw it. So, but also, is it too much to ask a team on defense to, actually get a stop,
Mm-hmm.
Back, me being a longtime suffering Browns fan, when John Elway had this, fantastic drive to go and beat the Browns in the AFC Championship years ago when it was at 87, 88 or something, They're like, now they called it the drive. Now it's just like another end of the game drive. You see it all the time. With the NFL games going on this weekend, super wild card weekend, you watch, there'll be some game with like a minute 22 left, and there'll be some dude that goes and drives the ball down the field and, for a game-winning field goal or touchdown. So, but regardless, look, Georgia won on a last-second field goal, so you really do have to go and give them credit for that.
Yeah, I thought it was a great win. Finish off 8-2. Could end up top 5. Definitely trending next year. Got a pivotal big matchup right out of the gate next year. It's going to be Georgia against Clemson, actually, in Bank of America Stadium. Hopefully things with COVID are better. Maybe we can get half the stadium, 3/4 of the stadium by then. We've got 9 months. So JT Daniels is coming back. Got stable running backs. Look like they're coming back. Hopefully get Zamir White will come back. That'll be the next big decision. Loaded at wide receiver. Pickens, Kearis Jackson, Burton. Got some tight ends. So, yeah, future looks great. Might be a little step back on defense, but, yeah, I'm excited. Moving on to – that was the appetizer. Moving on to the big other playoff game in the Rose Bowl, which was moved to Texas. 31-14, beatdown, semi-beatdown. Alabama taking care of business. Mac Jones looking great. 4 touchdowns, 297 yards. Najee Harris, another day at the office, 125 yards. And Devontae Smith killing it with 7 receptions, 130 yards, 3 touchdowns, and won the Heisman Trophy on Tuesday, not of this week. Virtual Heisman Trophy, which was weird, but it is what it is. And beatdown of Notre Dame as Notre Dame gets embarrassed again. Hadn't won a big game, New Year's Eve since 1998. But Sean.
Now, Trey, can I give you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I give you my thoughts on this first?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, so what was the final of the game again?
31-14. Yeah, what was your
if you remember what
Scott?
My prediction? 31-7, and I was right until there was 56 seconds left in the game.
Backdoor touchdown.
And as they say, the end of that game meant more to some. If you had something in the game, what was the point spread of that game?
Yeah, it was actually, I think it's 18 or 19, and the back door did not cover because of that late touchdown. So I'm sure if you're a degenerate gambler out there, not happy. But, yeah, they did not cover. Bama didn't cover.
Well, I would say this. Bama dominated the whole game, and it should have been worse. If you're watching that game, it should have been worse. Now, Brian Kelly goes, and he talks, hey, we want to change the narrative. But if you want to change the narrative, then it's got to be done in the bowl season. It's got to be in the postseason. You just can't beat Clemson on a cloudy day. So, I think Notre Dame's going to need a lot of ice, not only for getting their asses kicked, but also the bruised ego. So I'm sure we'll hear some more about, there's our standards here and our academic standards and everything. But it really, at the end of the day, it's bruised egos. If you want to change the narrative, you have to do it on the field. And me, being a longtime Ohio State fan and Ohio State alumnus, hey, I have experience in that because we couldn't beat Michigan in the 90s. Okay, and then you hire a new coach. And, he wins the national title versus Miami. That's fantastic. Jim Tressel. But then we had issues with the SEC and the best of the SEC, and that's Florida and LSU. But then you have to recruit. You have to recruit better. You have to recruit the people that fit your program. Or as I say, as Notre Dame people go back to, and they'll say, but our academic standards, everything. Then join the Ivy League. Or you're going to keep on getting your ass kicked, in the postseason because you're now 0-7 in big bowl games or BCS and playoff games since 1998. And as far as that goes for Bama, Bama looked fantastic. It looked like a warm-up game for Bama. Devontae Smith, he was fantastic. Najee Harris is jumping over dudes. And Mac Jones has all the time in the world. So Bama looked like Bama. And Notre Dame looked like Notre Dame.
Yeah. Right. Well, and to kind of piggyback on what Scott did, I think that the difference is, I think Notre Dame most years, they have enough talent to beat teams, to beat the average Joes and probably even like a top 15 team. When they get towards those, elite level, championship games with elite talent, they're just always overmatched, right? And I think as Scott's kind of alluding to, Notre Dame does have higher academic standards that do prohibit them at some level from, admitting some of those kids that they, would have admitted certainly when Lou Holtz was there.
But that's just an excuse. As I pointed out last week, this is an academic challenge. So put a better team on the field or join the Ivy League.
But I think to kind of piggyback to what you were saying, though, Notre Dame kind of has to decide. There's no point in Notre Dame really being in these games because they're always going to be overmatched. If Notre Dame wants to play college football and, at the highest level, they do kind of have to decide, or they're going to have to readmit those kids. They've got to decide if they want to play it at the highest level, or if they just want to be, academic U. Because, I hate to say it, but, I feel like there was probably, and we talked about it last week, there's probably 4 or 5 teams that deserve to be in there over, Notre Dame, to be completely honest, that we felt like probably could have given them a better matchup, right? I mean, I think if you put Florida in there, that's probably a better game. The SEC title game was a way better game than that was. If you give Texas A&M a rematch, you give Cincinnati an opportunity. I think that there's a plethora of teams that had you put them in there against Bama. I don't necessarily think that they win, but I don't think that they get beat, by 20-plus points either.
The only defense I'll give Alabama, now these are just my rules, but an ass kicking starts at 17 points or more. Now, maybe it's less than that. Maybe it's more than that if there's a garbage touchdown late. But, those are my rules, 17 points or more. But sometimes, oh, hey, look, they dominated the game. I still look back at that game, and Bama should have beaten them by more. So as crazy as it sounds, they took their foot off the pedal. Now, in their defense, if I'm going to go and defend Notre Dame, it's really these last couple of years, that fourth team is just, here you go, take your ass kicking, because Oklahoma really wasn't that different a couple of years ago. Wasn't it, who played LSU last year? Was it Oklahoma that got in and, versus LSU, and LSU, kicked their butts. And then, Bama did that with Kyler Murray a couple of years ago and that 4th seed. So, that's the only thing I'll say with Notre Dame. But the thing is, you can't continually be on the biggest stage and get your ass handed to you and then expect to you can still be a good team. You can still be a pretty good team. But, I mean, Notre Dame has all these national titles, and their alumni will remind you about it all the time. And you don't have that same elite level talent.
Yeah. So I agree. So, 31-14, beating Notre Dame. Hadn't won a big game. Scott mentioned that last week, since 1998. I think going forward, they need to really get a look at, putting Notre Dame in again. There's all these other options. We should expand to 8 teams. So we'll talk about that probably later. But, Alabama take care of business, 31-14. And on to the main event, 49-28. Hate crime, beat down. Justin Fields just went nuts, 6 touchdowns. Trey Sermon ran all over him, 193 yards as Ohio State. Actually, how about pre-ranking of Ohio State number 11 by this man, Dabo Swinney, 49-28. Let's go ahead and bring Scott. Scott, how did it feel to humble this man?
Oh, it felt fantastic. I'll just give you just a couple brief thoughts on it here. It was an ass kicking, and I enjoy every single minute of it. A storm came for sunshine. Now, me as an Ohio State fan, I was still nervous up 28 because Trevor could come back. He could come back, right. But, you got to understand the motivation these guys had. They had that score up in the Woody Hayes facility in the offseason. So when they're doing all these offseason workouts, they've got that score up from last year, 29-23. And, usually that goes, what they have is how many days it is to the Michigan game. So that kind of replaced, beat Michigan and how many days, because right now, hey, Clemson has been our more of a rival that we can't get over than what Michigan's been. Now, what I love, and I don't know if you have that picture, Trey, of Dabo at halftime here. Do you happen to have that picture?
I do. Hold on just a second.
You can go ahead and put up, and I'll give you my thoughts on Dabo.
There you go. Boom.
Yeah, so here's a picture of Dabo at halftime, and it looks like he's been hit by a Mack truck. Now, the question is, what is the Mack truck filled up with? My guess is humble pie. Now, what I've heard is a lot of Clemson people say, well, we didn't have an offensive coordinator. Well, it's funny because you look like you played without a defensive coordinator. Are you sure your defensive coordinator wasn't out with COVID as well?
Yeah, where was Brent Venables? Yeah.
I guess when you huddle up, which we did a lot during that game, Ohio State did. And if you remember, we spoke about this last week. So if you don't know what play is coming because you haven't stole the sign, then I guess, Venables is such a genius. But, the fact of the matter is, look, we just outplayed them and we outcoached them. Now, I don't know if you have that picture of Trey Sermon. I don't know if you have that picture of Trey Sermon that I showed you.
Right. How about this guy? He was happy, right?
Ryan Day, we like to call that a shit-eating grin. That's after the game, And that's just the satisfaction from knowing that, hey, we were not going to leave anything to doubt, But I would tell you this, they're the best damn 11th team I've ever seen,
Yeah.
So with the fact of the matter is, if you're Clemson, you can go ahead and you can do that with modern-day Florida State. If you're playing NC State or Wake Forest, you can talk that junk before the game. But as soon as you start playing similar talent, I mean, we were already super motivated for the game. So then they talked about they had the best practices leading up to that, So you can't motivate similar talent. It was just stupid and arrogant of them. I remember Dabo saying before the game, well, hey, I just got to do what's right. I could probably run for, governor of Michigan. Well, I'll tell you, as an Ohio State alumni and fan, he'd fit in perfectly with the ass kicking he just took, because we've got a lot of those out to Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what I heard that their end of the year reception party is actually going to be a pizza party at Chuck E. Cheese with a special guest of Chester Cheetah. It ain't easy being cheesy.
There you go.
Now, but if I want to talk about the game, I mean, the
how
fact of the matter
about
is,
this, Scott? We found it for you. Here you go, your boy.
Well, there you go, man. Look at that grin on his face. I mean, talk about Trey Sermon having another huge game, running for he's having a very Zeke-like performance where he ran for 331 of the Big Ten championship, Ohio State record, and he ran for another I want to say 193 in this game. So I think I think he has another one in him. Now, if I will say, compared to what happened last year with Sean Wade, and I hated that when they threw him out of the targeting call, to go and throw a kid out of the game like that, where it was 16-0, changed the whole game. Well, Skowski, that madman for Clemson, I mean, of course I wanted to have him throw out because of the irony of it all. I was like, you better throw him out of the game. But if I'm honest with you, I hate to see somebody penalized for playing football. I mean, he's their heart of their defense. And I kind of look at it, I think they should have a rule that, hey, if you want to keep the penalty and still call it 15 yards, fine. But it's like in basketball, they have a flagrant 1 and they have a flagrant 2. So if it's just something egregious and you want to eject him for what we'll call flagrant 2, fine. But otherwise, if you say this is flagrant 1, or if you have 2 hits like that during the game, then so be it. I mean, I kind of make the analogy in the 70s, they were trying to come up with a safer cigarette. And they said, hey, because people were falling asleep and the cigarette's falling out of their mouth and it was going on the couch and, there'd be these fires. We need to have a safer cigarette. And they put flame retardants in the couch. And now, you can get couches without flame retardants because it's they say, hey, that some of those things might cause cancer. Well, at the end of the day, there is no safe cigarette. So I'm going to make that same analogy in the football sense of there's no 100% safe way of playing football. You can get out there and you can get hurt. Now you want to make it as safe as possible, fine. But if you really want to be safe, then don't play football at all. But to go ahead and throw a kid out of the game because of that, I think is going too far. Now in terms of the game, look, I mean, we just dominated. I mean, the lines, the offensive line and D-line dominated the whole game, and it was fantastic to say. That's part of the reason Trey Sermon had such another big day, because we dominated their D-line. And I still have concerns about the secondary, and we'll talk about that in our national title game preview. But, we held ETN to 32 yards, and I can't even put really all of that on Trevor and his performance because he didn't have any time to throw the ball. I mean, we just took it to him. So you have that elite level talent, but we also have the motivation factor. Now, can we play with that same level of intensity and rage, controlled rage against Bama? We're going to need to if we want to beat Alabama, because this wasn't the championship game. This is just to get into the championship game. I mean, beyond that, offensive obviously looked great. Fields, even though he got hurt, he had those ribs of steel, so he played through that, played fantastic. Hopefully they give him every legal drug to numb those things up for the championship game. So, but I mean, he did a fantastic job. He was just dialed in. You could tell from the very beginning. We did a great job running the ball. We did a great job, with the wide receivers. D-line played out of their mind. I'm still concerned about the secondary when we have to play Devontae Smith, but against Clemson, it was enough. What are your thoughts, Sean?
I think you hit the, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think that Dabo probably played, this whole thing about as stupidly as you could have. I mean, it's dumb to give any team bulletin board material. And so, sitting there and just, calling them the 11th best team in college football, it's just unnecessary. It's tacky. I mean, and it just makes you seem, holier than thou, so to speak. And it's not really going to give your team any benefit. I think Ohio State just wanted this one more. They dominated, their offensive line, I think, played about as dominant as I think I've seen an offensive line play all year. And just, and Justin Fields certainly played, as well as any quarterback all year. I mean, his touch on that deep ball is absolutely amazing. I think he had more touchdowns, like 30 or more yards than he did incompletions in the game, something crazy like that. He just played great. I do think that to some extent, I think Clemson, and they haven't, the one area I think where they've kind of struggled of late, recruiting-wise, are two things. I think wide receiver and offensive line. And so I think you saw those, become issues. I mean, Ohio State's defense has actually looked, I think, great the past couple of weeks, right? I mean, they looked right in the Big Ten title game. They were really the reason you won that game, I think. And that kind of continued here. But Clemson's offensive line was completely overmatched. Trevor had no time to throw. And their wide receivers didn't really have much. They just didn't have that same ability to stretch the field like they have in years past. So I think that's some of what some of what we saw. So, I mean, it is what it is. I think that, Ohio State certainly looked like we had all expected them to look at the beginning of the year. And it looks like it's going to kind of be the matchup everybody thought it was going to be, Ohio State versus Alabama.
Yeah.
Now, Trey, I guess we've got about 10 minutes. Do you want to cover a little bit of that national title game preview as well?
Yes, sir. Good win, 49-28. Ohio State moves on to the big booty daddy, Ohio State versus Alabama. Nick Saban versus Ryan Day. 8-point spread currently, Monday night. It's in the Superdome. Is that it? No, AT&T. Is it in
Yeah, it's in Miami. So.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Miami. So, 49-28. Get your thoughts on it, Scott. This is your team going for is this number 8, number 9 national title?
This would be number 9. So I'll tell you this: we won national titles in 2002 and 2014. Those have been our last two. Each one of those have come with a loss to a team from South Carolina in the bowl game the previous year. The one exception to that. So we lost to South Carolina in 2001 at the bowl game, and then we won the 2002 national title. We lost to Clemson at a bowl game in 2013, and then we won the national title in 2014. The one exception is 2017. We lost to Clemson in 2016, and then I think we didn't make the playoffs. We ended up being USC, I think, at the Cotton Bowl. Anyways, I have a buddy of mine that's funny that he went and he told me, Clemson grad in 2013, and he had this one possession game. He went on and on and on about how far we're off and everything else. And then of course the next year we go and win the national title. So the thing is, if it's Bama, and Bama's a fantastic team. So if we go and we beat Bama, then that would just be, hey, if you go ahead and you beat Clemson and Bama back to back, I mean, you just can't do any better than that. But what I will say is, if we do lose the game, then we lose it to Bama. Okay, we don't lose it to the rest of the SEC. So if I've got to hear from these SEC fans that are from Mississippi State or Arkansas or Ole Miss or Vanderbilt or South Carolina or Tennessee or Kentucky, all these great SEC teams.
South Carolina.
Then, well, I'm just giving you an example of all these great SEC teams. The thing is, in the Big Ten, okay, if a Penn State or Michigan wins a title, I don't celebrate. And here are all these other SEC fans, outside of your Bamas and your LSUs and your Georgia and your Floridas, they want to say, oh, hey, we got another one. I'm like, you got another what? I mean, you got another ass kicking by Bama this year as well. It's kind of like the little brother that gets beat by the bigger brother every weekend, and he goes and he brags to everyone in the neighborhood how tough his bigger brother is. I'm like, well, he's bigger, stronger, and he's older, and he kicks your ass every week. But yeah, you want to go ahead and tell me, how you're better. Look, if we lose, we lose to Bama. Now, I know in the SEC that you can spell SEC. But I can tell you, obviously in the Big Ten, I will say this, that we can't count because obviously it's the Big Ten and there's 14 teams. But look, I told you the story of why they called the Ohio State University last week, and here you just thought we were a bunch of pretentious assholes. But the thing that's funny is, don't you think we'd fit well into the SEC if they ever expanded, if that was the case?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree. Why is it not called the Big 14?
I don't know. They're sticking with that brand. But the fact of the matter is, we're going to have to play with the same level of intensity as Clemson, to go ahead and win that game. And the other fact of the matter is, look, like every team in college football history at some point in time has had their ass kicked. Now, it happened to Clemson last week. Happened to Bama in 2018, okay? It's happened before Ohio State in their past. So it's just it's tough to keep that same level of. I mean, look, it happened at Ohio State versus Clemson in 2016. So it is so tough to go ahead and always have that same level of dominance. But right now, I think we're playing great. If I were to pick a score of this game, I'd say 48-45, Ohio State. It's just everybody always says, hey, Tua, take a look, for example, as you well know, he came at his first time he played the second half of the national championship game. He won one, and then he made it to another one, and then he got hurt his final year. Trevor won as a freshman, so he won one, and then he made it, and they lost to LSU last year and got their ass kicked by Ohio State this year. It's just so difficult to get these national titles, so you really do need to take advantage when you get it. I mean, I look at Bobby Bowden only had two. You look at Ohio State. We won in 2014, bring back a super talented team in 2015, and we only had one loss, but we really can't get it together. So those are kind of my thoughts on the the national title game. Trey, how much time do we have left, or we want to cover this in part two?
Yeah, we'll get into that in part two. I did want to mention that how hard it is. I heard it the other day. Trevor Lawrence, high school, one loss in his 4 years at Sandy Creek was his high school, and he had 2 losses at Clemson. So he's only had 3 losses in his high school and college career, and then he's probably going to go to Jacksonville. So good luck with that.
He's going to have more than 3 losses in Jacksonville. He's going to double that up, maybe triple that up next year.
I agree. And then I think that shows you how, going back to Urban Meyer, for Ohio State coach, when you won 2 with Tim Tebow, was it 2 out of 3 years or whatever it was? How
That's
impressive
right.
is
2006,
that?
2008.
That's crazy, isn't it? Right, Sean?
That is.
Yeah, Sean, brief thoughts on the Ohio State Clemson Tide game. A little preview before.
Clemson
You mean the Ohio State Bama game?
Yes, sir.
I think that Ohio State's got a really good shot in the game, to be completely honest with you. I think they're probably a little bit more of a complete team. I mean, to me, their defense has been dominant the past 2 performances. Bama's looked good against Notre Dame, but obviously there was a noticeable talent difference. Mm-hmm. And then obviously with how quickly Bama can get ahead of you, it tends to make teams one-dimensional. And Ohio State's offense is just as good as Bama's. So I think they got a legitimate shot.
Yeah.
What's your quick pick?
Really?
I think it's going to be Ohio State. I think Ohio State probably by 7, like 42-35, something like that.
You got it. Good deal. All right, I'm going to make my quick pick. I'm going to go Saban versus Ryan Day. Another interesting thing is Steve Sarkisian. Is he really focused on this game, or is he more focused? Is his heart in Austin? I think that's really interesting. So I'm going to go shootout. It's going to be a heavyweight battle. I'm going to go 45-41. Alabama will not cover. So I would take, if I was a degenerate gambler, I'd take Ohio State and points. And I'll be that guy to pick Alabama, even though I just don't want the whole meltdown if Justin Fields and Ohio State wins. The whole pushback on Kirby is another thing. And Saban would pass the Bear with 7 national titles, 6 at Alabama and 1 with LSU. So that's impressive. What you think?
I think that's.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's a great game. Obviously, I want it to be a blowout from Ohio State fan.
Yeah.
But that's what I want to see. But I think if you're just not involved in either one of the teams, you want to see a great game.
Yeah.
And maybe we should talk about this in further detail, but maybe we should do it in episode 2.
Exactly. We got episode 2. Got a little technical.
Or I should say part 2 of our current episode.
We're going to go over part 2. Got a little technical difficulties with low battery here. So please go over and check out part 2 on Herschel Talker's YouTube. And that was another great episode. And we're out.